Thank you, and good morning, and welcome again to the Foreign Office. Foreign Office at the heart of Whitehall and the home of the British government. So it won't surprise you to know that I'm going to talk a bit about what government does. Government very often perceived as being too slow to respond or too detached and remote from what's going on the ground. Well, as a career civil servant and diplomat, so very much a Whitehall woman, you might say, and chair of FCO Women, I want to talk about what the British government is doing to improve the lives of women and girls around the world. I want to start by inviting you to imagine you're a young woman in South Sudan, one of the world's youngest countries, a country in which has seen more than its fair share of conflict and instability, and in which rape and sexual assault are seen as tools of war. After the man raped me, my family would not eat with me. They treated me like a dog, and I had to eat alone. Sexual violence in conflict is widespread. It affects large numbers of women, but also men and children. In addition to the physical and psychological trauma, survivors and children born of sexual violence often suffer long-term stigma, which takes them away from their communities, their networks of support, and very often they're denied justice. This can make peace and reconciliation even more elusive. So that's why in 2012, former Foreign Secretary, now Lord William Hague, and UN Special Envoy Angelina Jolie launched the Preventing Sexual Violence Initiative. The aim was to address the culture of impunity, to raise awareness around the world of this issue, to bring perpetrators to account, and of course, to support the survivors, both men and women. In June 2014, they hosted here in London the Global Summit to End Sexual Violence in Conflict, the first and largest meeting of its kind. Attended by 128 countries, 79 ministers, 8 UN agency heads, presidents, prosecutors from international courts and tribunals, delegates from over 300 delegates from conflict-affected countries, and thousands of members of the public. This summit placed this issue firmly on the conscience of the world. It secured agreements, funding, pledges, capacity building, deployments to train health officials, authorities, to bring perpetrators to account, and pledges to fund work to support the survivors. I can give you plenty more of examples, but unfortunately today time prevents. But what I can say is we're still making a difference. Under the leadership of Foreign Office Minister Baroness Ainley, who was appointed as the Prime Minister's Special Representative on the Preventing Sexual Violence in Conflict in June last year, we're still working away. Our work did not finish when the cameras turned away. It takes time, but if you think that government can't make a difference, please think again. I want now for you to imagine that you are Safina. You're 17 years old, you're doing really well at school, and you're looking forward to going to university. You're also looking forward to going on a holiday with your family, to visit your grandparents, and to attend a family wedding. When you get there, you realise that the wedding is yours, to somebody you barely know, who's several decades older than you. Imagine how powerless you feel, how vulnerable and how conflicted. The very people you trusted, your parents, who you love and trusted, have put you into this situation. There's no way out but to bring shame on them and to cause them to lose face in their family and their wider community. But you know in your heart you cannot go through with this wedding. So you have to be really brave. You text your friend in the UK, who gets in touch with the embassy in the country, and slowly, you build a relationship of trust with the consular team at that embassy, and you come up with a plan. On a predetermined day of your choosing, the consular team with local police support come to your house. You're waiting, your suitcase is packed and ready. They manage to get you into the car and drive you back to Capital, where they put you in a safe house, also funded by the British government. They know how you feel. They feel as if you have turned against your parents, and they understand that because they have dealt and supported many other people in this situation. So they put you in touch with somebody who can help you. And after a day or so in the safe house, they'll make arrangements to get you back to the UK, perhaps into the care of supportive family members or your friends, or into the care of social work. That's a generalised account of a survivor of forced marriage. In June 2014, the UK made it illegal to force somebody into a marriage against their will, or in the case of mental capacity, that you cannot make the decision yourself. The law is applicable overseas as well. So Safina, had she wanted to, had she chosen to, could have prosecuted her parents, but that's a huge step, a massive, massive step. The Foreign Office hosts here a joint unit between Foreign Office and Home Office, the Forced Marriage Unit. It's staffed by specially trained officials and social workers who can give advice and support to people who think they may be facing a forced marriage or have already been entered into one. Last year, they gave advice and support to over 1,200 people. Think about that, that's over 100 a month, and have cases in over 90 countries around the world. Let me be really, really clear about this. This is not about arranged marriage. This is not about making a cultural comment on a tradition that has lasted many, many generations. Because in arranged marriage, there is choice, and in forced marriage, there is not. And I am deeply proud because I have seen for myself how the UK has taken a stand against this practice. Still think government can't make a difference? Okay, one more example. How the British government, through the Department for International Development, DFID, is backing an African-led global movement to end female genital mutilation or cutting within a generation. FGM is a deeply embedded social norm, widespread in Africa and parts of Asia, and considered essential as a rite of passage as a girl transitions from girlhood into womanhood and in preparation for marriage. Imagine you're a 13-year-old in Burkina Faso. 3 out of every 4 women and girls in your country have suffered FGM. You would know when it took place in your village because, my goodness, you could hear the screaming. After legislation banning the practice, community meetings, education, Burkina Faso has seen a decrease of over 30% in the practice, and these days only 9% of the population think this is are in favour of that practice. There's plenty more that the UK does. We lead the way on tackling violence against women and girls. We deliver world-leading expert training on gender and violence issues to foreign military personnel. Under the leadership of our Prime Minister, and she's a great supporter, as you saw, when she was Home Secretary, we've been tackling modern-day slavery, which of course affects men as well as women. We play a pivotal role at the annual United Nations meeting on the status of women, and we were a driving force to secure international agreement to the Gender Equality Sustainable Development Goal and ensure that gender is woven through all of those other SDGs. We sit on the high-level panel for the economic empowerment of women, recognising that only by enabling and supporting women to fulfil their economic potential can we really see change to their lives. And we're a recognised champion of the Women, Peace and Security agenda at the United Nations. This is government making a difference. Last year, in February, I interviewed former US Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, in this very room. It was absolutely packed out. And by the way, if you want to know what she has to say, check out her TED Talks, because they're fantastic, some great stories. In 1993, she was appointed US Ambassador to the United Nations, and she wanted to create a caucus of other female ambassadors. There were 7. So she called it the G7, the Girl 7, presumably. This brought different perspectives around the negotiating table and helped to build consensus. And while the context at the time was very, very different, there's no doubt that what was done there has helped set the tone for future action. We do this because it's the right thing to do, because it's the morally right, but it also the right thing to do, but it unleashes huge economic potential as well. That greater equality brings stronger and more competitive economies. That when women are sitting around the negotiating table, peace agreements are more durable and inclusive. And as women in Whitehall, we know that when women are fully involved in civil society and politics, governments become more open, transparent, and democratic. The theme for today is time. 40 years ago, the UK appointed its first female ambassador, Dame Anne Warburton, to Denmark. Now we have some 50 female heads of mission around the world, from Australia to Zimbabwe. We haven't yet had a female ambassador in Washington or at the United Nations, but it's surely just a matter of time. Much has changed in the last 40 years, and much of what I've talked about wasn't on the agenda at that time. I'd like to say that 40 years later, the world has become unrecognisable, but there is still more to do. And my hope is that it won't take another 40 years to see real change in the lives of women and girls around the world. We want to see women at every level of leadership, from every walk of life, unleashing their potential and that of their communities, and being role models for young girls to become the leaders of the future. It will take effort, will, commitment, and of course time. But if you thought that government couldn't make a difference, I hope I've helped you to think again. Thank you very much.